Right, hello guys, and welcome to my second video on how to play Lord and Lands. So these videos are going to be bite-sized chunks, and this one's going to concentrate on movement. So I've got my army here arrayed before me. We're going to use the dice that I rolled in the last video in order to demonstrate the pip use. So let's say that I've won initiative. And I've rolled my dice. I've got 17 pips there to spend in my turn. So if you remember, I won initiative, so I get to move a base or a group of bases first. Now, group bases can be up to a maximum of 4. So what I'm going to do is over to the right there, I've got my orangutan archers, and there's a simian cohort unit on the end there. Now the orangutan archers can move at 3, but the simian cohort can only move at 2. Now I must move at the slowest rate unit in the group, so I have to move these chaps just 2. Now if they were a single unit, I would be able to pay an extra pip and boost their movement, or maximum of extra 2 pips and boost their movement twice, but because they're in a group, I cannot boost my movement rate. So there's no general attached to that, so that costs me a pip. So my 17 becomes 16. Play then passes to your opponent moves, and then play passes back to you. Now I'm going to go with another grouped unit this time, and the simian cohort there in the centre, the 4 units, are going to advance. Each move has a pip cost. Advance to an objective is 3 pips, attack is 2 pips, defend is 1 pip, advance is 1 pip, and a manoeuvre is 3 pips. Now an advance move is a move in any direction, and that would be your standard movement allowance. If you're moving forward, if I'm moving to the side or to the rear, that's an advance, but I do so at half my movement rate. So these chaps have a movement rate of 2, so I can move them up to 2 MDs. Now the interesting thing about these is you can see there I've got a hero attached to this unit, so if you've got a general or a subordinate like a hero, you can receive orders directly and you don't have to spend pips. So I'm going to move that group forward to support my archers. My hero goes with him, and that move didn't cost me any pips. So you play then passes to your opponent gets to move, and then play passes back to me. And what I want to do is I want to move this guy here, so right on the left. This is a monster, it's a great dingo neck. Now he's a single unit, he's not grouped, so I can, if I want, I can boost his move. So an advanced move will be 1, but I want this guy to manoeuvre. So I'm going to spend 3 pips for the manoeuvre. And I'm also going to spend an extra pip so that I get to boost his movement allowance by 1 MD. So his movement allowance is 4, and because he's manoeuvring, I'm measuring from the furthest point of the base to the furthest point of the proposed position. Like that. And then because I've paid for a boost, I can manoeuvre him there. Now advance a move or a manoeuvre, in fact any other manoeuvre apart from an attack, cannot end in contact with an enemy. So if you actually contact an enemy, you have to perform a charge manoeuvre which costs 2 pips, and it has to be straight ahead. So play then passes to my opponent, he gets a go, and then play passes back to me. Now looking down here in the centre, I've got my heavy hitters here. These are my rhino men, and I've got an Emlanatuka on the end there. My rhino men's movement allowance is 3, so I can move them forward up to 3. Now the Emlanatuka's movement allowance is 4, but he's in a group with rhino men, and I want them to stay in a coordinated group, so I must move at the slowest rate in the group, which is the rhino men of 3. So they've actually got plenty of room to move up and support these troops there. It's worth mentioning at this point that regular units cannot interpenetrate. So if I'm pushed back, I push back those friendly troops behind me. If I want to advance, I have to wait for them to get out of the way in order for me to move through. Skirmish troops don't have to do this, they can interpenetrate, and so can flying troops. But for these guys, they must lumber on like a regular army and wait for guys to get out of the way. In an advance manoeuvre, I can slide 1 MD to the left or to the right to avoid friendly troops or terrain, but you must include that in your movement allowance. So if you're moving forward 2 and you want to slide 1 MD to the left to avoid troops, then your movement will be 3, and that will be your the movement allowance of those rhinomen will be taken up, so it'll be 2 forward and 1 to the left in order to avoid friendly troops, and that will be their 3 MD movement allowance. So those chaps got an advance order, so I'd spend a pip to do that. And as you can see, I'm halfway through this 1,000-point army, halfway through moving this 1,000-point army, and I'm down to 12 pips. Now you've got to remember, early on in the game, you spend a lot of your pips by moving your army and boosting your army's movement. But as you get close to the shooting phase, then you're going to need to worry about how many pips you're going to spend on boosting your guys' shooting statistics. And if you get into close combat, obviously you're going to need a lot more pips for that. So early on in the game, we're concentrating on movement, and we spend a lot of our pips on movement. So I hope that explains movement for you. The movement for single bases is exactly the same as it is for group bases, but if I wanted to move these were elephants on their own, and I wanted to advance them, I'd have to spend a pip for that, the same way as I'd have to spend a pip for that whole group of units there. And that's just because he's receiving a separate order. So the pip actually relates to the sending, the receiving of, and the acting of orders. Alright chaps, stay tuned, and the next one I think will be shooting.